ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the top 10 best movies of 2023. Just as I did my top 10 worst movies of 2023, now I have my top 10 best of 2023, and this list is a lot more special, and hence why I decided to do it after top 10 worst. And surprisingly, there were actually plenty of good movies this year. Yeah, there are plenty of bad ones, but there were plenty of good movies this year too, and hence why I'm going to actually have some honorable mentions on this list. And of course, this list is a subject to a change, because I haven't seen all the movies this year. Like, my list from last year is actually quite different than when I made it. In fact, I'm going to say, like, my top 2 haven't changed. It's still Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and The Northman as my top 2, but other than that, the list has quite changed a lot. Like Daily Wire's Shut In and The Banshees of Inisherin now are both totally in the top 5, probably 3 and 4th spot. But this is what my current list of top 10 best movies of 2023 looks like. And as I said, it's subject to a change, especially that I'm hearing nothing but really great things about the Iron Claw, but because sadly this movie isn't coming out here in Poland until February, so it will be a while before I get to watch it and review for you guys, but this is what my current list at least looks like as my favorite movies of 2023. And now let's start with the honorable mentions. And my honorable mentions are Napoleon. Yeah, like this was actually my very most anticipated movie of the year, but because the movie is more like a bunch of cliff notes from Napoleon's life as opposed to a natural biography like it's supposed to be, and Joaquin Phoenix, I still feel he's too old at the beginning of the movie to play young Napoleon. But I'm positive the director's cut will fix the problem, at least the cliff notes problem. But as things currently stand, because of the way the movie is structured and Joaquin Phoenix not being quite fit to play young Napoleon, I can only put it in honorable mentions. I mean, we'll see what the director's cut will do. I'm actually positive the director's cut will fix many of the problems, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But as things currently stand, I feel I can only really put Napoleon in honorable mentions. John Wick Chapter 4, and I think this is the best John Wick movie by far. It's also only in honorable mentions because if I'm being honest, I was never as into John Wick as most people. In fact, I haven't seen those movies at first. I only binged watched them to prepare for Chapter 4, so this franchise for me isn't particularly special like it is to many people. But I thought they were really great action movies, full of awesome action, and I thought Chapter 4 was a wonderful conclusion to the whole saga, and I thought the action was spectacular and everything, and Keanu Reeves was phenomenal. So although it's not like one of my favorite franchises, I still think it's a wonderful conclusion, and it belongs here in honorable mentions. Extraction 2, and now this is an action franchise I will say I'm far more familiar with than John Wick, because I've seen the first Extraction right when it came out on Netflix, and I remember really enjoying the movie and remember how I thought the action was spectacular, and I think the sequel is actually even better than the first movie, and the action is simply phenomenal and spectacular, and the characters are really interesting, and Chris Hemsworth is simply phenomenal as Tyler Rake, and it's all around a super cool action movie, and I'm really having a good time anytime I watch it. And as I said, both Extraction movies are great, but I think the sequel is slightly better, and the villains are even better in the sequel. Super Mario Bros. Movie, and now this is the movie that I really think you have to be a Mario fan to truly appreciate it, because this is a very fan-servicey movie, and the criticism against it that it's pure fan service and not really and couldn't really appeal to non-Mario fans, I can totally see that. But I personally love the movie, especially because I am a huge Super Mario fan, and I also think the animation in the movie is fabulous, one of the best computer animations I ever seen, together with How to Train Your Dragon 3 or Asterix, The Secret of the Magic Potion, and The references to Mario and Nintendo as a whole are super fun. So I'm personally really enjoyed the movie, and I'm really looking forward to see of more of this Nintendo cinematic universe. Especially I'm excited that they announced Donkey Kong movie. And finally, The Boy and the Heron. And now this movie has actually a chance to be on the list at some point. I thought it was a really good time, and Miyazaki has always did a good job, but at the same time I thought that Miyazaki did better before, like Princess Mononoke is still my favorite movie of his, plus Castle in the Sky or Howl's Moving Castle. Still, sometimes it takes more than one time to watch a Miyazaki movie to truly appreciate the magic of it, so I'm not ruling out that the more I watch The Boy and the Heron, the more I will appreciate and love it. We'll totally see. But as of now, it's just an honorable mention, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that as I watched more, I will grow far and far more appreciation for it, like I did for plenty of other Miyazaki movies. But now, let's get to the actual list. Actual top 10 best movies of 2023, or my personal favorites, at least. Starting with number 10. And number 10 is this Polish movie, Chłopi, or The Peasants. And now this movie, this is a perfect example of the movie that I consider very much a work of art. Because the actual story, I can't say is quite for me. I mean, it's a very well done story and all, but especially the ending, it's not quite for me. And it's not the type of movie I'll be visiting particularly often. But I still very much recommend it, if you have a chance to see it, just for pure work of art that it is. The painting style animation is simply unique, gorgeous, and it's unlike anything I ever seen before. And also I love how it explores the life of peasants in a 19th century Polish village, and it's very accurate, and the characters solely act like people in those days would act, as opposed to being modernized, and the Polish folk music is simply excellent, and the movie is so immersive and all, and you totally feel like you're transported back in time to a life of village of Polish peasants. So simply due to the spectacular animation and a nice reflection of the Polish village culture in 19th century, that alone, as I think, is a reason to see this movie and why it's on the list at all. And the reason it's number 10 is because, as I said before, I can't say the ending is quite for me, even though it's technically how originally the book ended by Władysław Reymont. And fun fact, something I haven't mentioned in my review, Władysław Reymont actually got a Nobel Prize for writing this book. I forgot to mention it when I was reviewing the movie, but better late than never. Number 9, and I'm very surprised to say it because this movie is far better than it had any right to be, but it's Wonka. And that's probably because it was done by director of the Paddington movies, which are some of the best modern family feel-good movies ever, and I think the Wonka movie very much captures the magic of those Paddington movies. I can't say it's quite the same thing as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because it's way more lighthearted, but I personally had no problem with that. Sometimes I just want sometimes a good feel-good family movie is all I need, and this is a perfect example. Like, I think Timothée Chalamet is really great as Willy Wonka, and I'm glad he gave us more of a Gene Wilder version than a Johnny Depp version, although he also did give some of his own take on the character, which is also really good, and overall I like the whole atmosphere of the movie, and the story is really interesting and enjoyable, and the characters are actually quite likable, and the villains are really funny. They are intimidating when they need to be, but they are also really funny and all. And even though, as I said, it's way less dark than Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I think in some ways it's very nicely connected to that universe, and I like the overall themes of family and friendship in this movie. Again, this is one of those feel-good family movies that sometimes all you really need when you go see the movie. Number 8. The Killer. And yes, this movie very much feels like it was a passion project from David Fincher because it is so unique, and I really like the neo-noir style of the movie, and I also like how it's basically about a hitman, an assassin, and the movie very much delves into his psychology, and you totally hear his thoughts, and he very much sounds like, and those thoughts very much sound like those type of thoughts that a assassin or hitman would feel and all. And I think this is really well done, and there is not much dialogue in the movie. I mean, there is some, but not a lot of it. Most of the movie is actually very much inside the head of the killer, and I think Michael Fassbender does a phenomenal job portraying him. And there isn't even much action in the movie. There is one really good fight scene, but other than that, it's very much a psychological thriller, neo-noir style, and a very well done one. And this is a very unique movie, and rarely, such original ideas rarely happen nowadays. But when they do happen, they are a really good time. Number 7. And that's something that I originally thought I would put at number 1, but with time it has a little bit changed, and it probably belongs somewhere much higher, because from an objective standpoint it's better than a lot of movies are higher than it, but when it comes to sheer enjoyment, I had to ultimately put it number 7, and that's Oppenheimer. And yes, everything I said about the movie in my review, I stand by it. I still think it's a very educational, fabulous movie that taught me a lot about the creation of atomic bomb. A lot of things I didn't know before, and I really think Cillian Murphy simply kills it as Dr. Oppenheimer, and I also think the cinematography is great, like it should be from a Nolan movie. And first 2 acts of the movie are still fabulous, and some of the best filmmaking from Nolan I've ever seen. So the reason it's only number 7 is mostly because of the 3rd act, because I said in my review that I'll be rewatching the movie and we'll see how it goes, and upon subsequent reviews, I think 3rd act, after the bomb is dropped on Japan, after the 2 bombs are dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this is where I think the movie gets boring. When Oppenheimer gets tried for treason against the United States, this is, for me at least, where, clearly not for many people, but for me at least, this is where the movie starts getting boring and starts dragging for me. First 2 acts, phenomenal filmmaking from Nolan and some of his best. But the last act, after the dropping of atomic bomb, that's when it really gets boring. For me at least, but clearly not for many people. Number 6. And this movie has a high chance of getting higher on this list. In fact, I wanted to put it higher, but only put it here for one reason and one reason alone. And that's Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. Now, I think this is one of the best animated movies of the year. Like, I really love how the different comic style animations the movie uses, like the watercolored world of Gwen Stacy, and of course the regular world of Miles Morales, and so many different gorgeous animations like the Renaissance animation. Like, for sheer animation alone, I could put this movie on this list, but not just that, the story is also great and all. I really love the first Into the Spider-Verse movie, but I think Across the Spider-Verse, I'm going as far as to say, I think it was better. I also think the villain Spot was really awesome and all. So, the only reason why it's number 6 only, well, because it's not finished. This is one of those movies that ends and then you think, like, well, wait, what's next? And originally we were all hoping this movie would come out next year, but sadly it's been delayed indefinitely, and I wouldn't be surprised if we won't have to wait sadly till 2025 or worse 2026, but that's what happens, and that's also largely the reason why it's only number 6, because it will be a very long while since I'll have to wait to see how the story concludes. So, but if the payoff is amazing, and fingers crossed it will be, it has a high chance of being much higher on this list, because the movie was simply gorgeous, phenomenal. And again, it's only number 6 because I don't know where the story is going, but fingers crossed the payoff will be worth it and will move it much higher. Number 5, and this, surprisingly, I might be one of the few people that actually puts it on my best list, but I loved it so much, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy movies were always some of my favorites in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I loved both 1 and 2. I don't care what people say about 2. I loved Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was by far the best in the trilogy, and this is likely the very last Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. I mean, a good Marvel Cinematic Universe movie we'll get, but at least I'm glad we got it. Like, this is by far my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movie since Avengers Endgame. Yes, even more than Spider-Man No Way Home, because I love the movie so much. It's by far the darkest in the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, and yet it totally doesn't feel out of place. It very much feels at home with the first two movies. I also love the backstory of Rocket, especially that Rocket was always my favorite character, and the High Evolutionary is likely the most evil Marvel villain we've ever seen and all. And I thought the conclusion to every character, especially Peter Quill, was simply great and done justice to all their character arcs. I think this is a wonderful conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. And as I said, the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie since Avengers Endgame. And probably the last one that is that good, actually. Number 4. And that one I'll probably get some backlash from some people, but Sound of Freedom. Like, I don't care about all the stupid controversy that goes around this movie. Like, this is a very important and educational movie that I think everyone should watch. It's against child trafficking, and it shows us what type of awful tragedies children that are human trafficked almost every day face. In terms of importance, I think this probably should be number 1, but in terms of enjoyment, it's number 4. But again, if this was ranked purely in terms of importance, this would easily be number 1, because it's a very powerful and important movie that everyone should watch. And the controversy that surrounds it is simply frustrating and annoying. And I can't believe people are going after this movie just because they disagree with Jim Caviezel over his use. And I think Jim Caviezel, by the way, does a phenomenal job as Tim Ballard. And the overall story of the movie is interesting at all, and there isn't much action in this movie, but it makes sense because it's actually more natural this way. But overall, this is a very important and educational movie that shouldn't be controversial. But oh well, that's the type of crazy world we live in. But Sound of Freedom at number 4. Though in terms of importance, it possibly should be number 1. Number 3, and that's another shock, but Godzilla -1. Like, I've never been particularly into Godzilla movies. I mean, I did really like the original Japanese movies, I thought those were great, but when it came to at least American Godzilla movies, I thought that they were just nothing but empty spectacle without any care for the story. But this movie is the exact opposite. Sure, there is Godzilla, but he only attacks like in 3 scenes, while most of the movie is actually focused on characters and all, and their relationships, and they're all very likable characters, and I truly cared for them. And also I'm glad how it decided to revisit the roots and instead moved back to post-World War II, like Godzilla originally took place. But this movie made me reach one conclusion. To truly have a good Godzilla movie, it has to be done by the Japanese, because they truly seem to have love and passion for Godzilla, while people in the West seem mostly just concerned with special effects, while the Japanese truly seem to care about actually giving you a good story. And this movie is by far my favorite Godzilla movie ever, and it also showed me that a monster movie totally can have deep storytelling and complex, interesting, rich characters that you care about. And hence why Godzilla -1 at number 3. Oh, and also you could say in some ways it's a sequel to Oppenheimer, since while Oppenheimer is about the creation of an atomic bomb, this is about results after. Number 2, and that's another animated movie, and that's Suzume. And I think this is by far the best animated movie of the year, and one of the best anime movies I've seen in recent years. Like, the animation is simply gorgeous, the characters are very likable, and I really like the story of the movie and the connection between the two main characters and all. The music is also great and all, and if I compare it to this and The Boy and the Heron, the more I pondered it, I realized I actually think Suzume is a better movie. At least for now, we'll see how it goes when I watch The Boy and the Heron more. But as of now, I've seen Suzume a couple of times already, and I'm still having a really wonderful time when I'm watching this movie. Because everything in this movie is great. The animation, the characters, the story, and overall relationships between the characters. Great anime movie and one of the best animated movies of the decade. Although Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is still my favorite animated of this decade, but this is possibly the second one, for now at least. But my number one favorite movie of the year is, and I'm so surprised to say it, like if you asked me a month ago, I doubt I would put it all the way here, but upon a couple of rewatches, I'm surprised, but Tetris! Like, yes, I watched this movie only 2 weeks ago and I loved it so much. Like, I mean, I really loved it when I first watched it, and I watched it another time then and loved it again, and now I watched it like 2 weeks ago for the like third time, and each time I watch it I think I love it more. Like, everything in this movie is phenomenal. The story is really interesting and the characters are likable and the cinematography is gorgeous. Like, I don't really often pay attention to cinematography, but I very much paid attention to cinematography here, and if I pay attention to cinematography, then you know it's probably a really good cinematography. And also it discusses the subjects like I'm very passionate about, like video games and as well as the Cold War, especially that I'm very interested in the subject of the Cold War, and I also like that how it's both very much about the creation of a video game, but also in some ways it's very much a Cold War espionage thriller at all, and the performances are phenomenal, and I also like the relationship between the two main characters, who are real people actually, and how their relationship partially played in the release of Tetris, and also makes you appreciate Tetris far more, because you realize that if it wasn't for Tetris, none of our favorite video games probably would be here today. But, and bonus, I also like how the movie turns to video game style at a couple of moments when the scenes are transferring. While this wasn't necessary, it was totally fun. So yeah, I loved Tetris when I first watched it, but the more I watched it, the more I loved it, and yeah, I myself was very surprised, but as I was doing this list, I realized I just had to put it at number one, because I just love Tetris so much. Like, I can't think of a single thing I didn't like about this movie. I said it got everything that a good movie should. A great story, great characters and all, and even a great cinematography, which, as I've been saying, I don't pay attention much to cinematographies, but here I very much did. Okay guys, so here are my top 10 favorite movies of 2023. And again, this list is a subject to change because I still haven't seen some movies that came out this year, but for now, that's what my list looks like. Oh, and my 5-year-old niece is coming, wants to play with me, so I better get going, but thank you ladies and gentlemen for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll probably not make any more videos this year, so Happy New Year, and I will talk to you next year in another video. Talk to you in 2024. Bye.